Just a week ago, Tim Cook stepped out on the Apple Park virtual stage and said,
"This is the biggest day for iPad since its introduction."
The world sat up ready for what was to come. And there it was. iPad Air certainly got the biggest it ever had with a new 13-inch size. iPad Pro got impossibly thin and forgot one of its cameras, presumably left in its other roomier trousers. The basic non-Pro Air-free iPad 10th generation got a nearly 30% price cut, and we even got a new Apple Pencil because how could 3 pencils possibly have been enough? But there was one absence that filled the room: the perfect iPad Mini. Sidebar: I didn't expect us to be getting a new iPad Mini. There were no rumours of the update at this one, despite some people online predicting that there would be, but it has been a while, like 972 days kind of a while. That's almost 33 months. You don't even measure kids in months at that point. That is a 2.5-year-old. That's a toddler. Too old for a little perfect iPad. Anyway, back to the topic. All of the new iPads were announced except for the perfectly sized one, and yet it seems the internet is still not happy, because they'd been saying all along their problem with the iPad is not the hardware, but the software. Even though they were all pretty happy when the FaceTime camera got moved to the landscape side on the Pro and the Air, which sure sounds like a hardware change. Almost centered and everything. Johnny Ive would have been so proud. No, what everyone wanted was to make the iPad more usable, being able to truly multitask and take advantage of the power of the chips. Now, I would argue that apps like Final Cut Pro on the iPad already does that, especially when it's collating video feeds from 4 iPads or iPhones in real time. But what do I know? But Apple doesn't make all the apps though, so it might be worth pointing your fingers at the developers of the apps that you want to use that power in. Now, WWDC might fix some of the issues. The second most common was file management, and now basically everyone is okay with split screen apps on the iPad. Can we just have Finder? Now, it seems to me that if Files was replaced along with the biggest challenge Apple has faced to date, a calculator app for the iPad, most people would probably be happier. But the biggest issue for the iPad for me is the sprawling and confused lineup. iPad Pro is now lighter than Air, by which I mean the iPad Air, which is now a chunky boy, so the name makes 0 sense. Now, with all the iPads and sizes, and this is not counting differences of storage and stuff like that, there are 6 major lines, 4 Apple Pencils, and 5 very expensive keyboards. You get my drift? The key. The perfect iPad Mini. Don't you move. I can justify this. And I know, with the iPad Mini having an 8.3-inch display versus the largest iPhones getting a 6.7, soon to be 6.9-inch with the iPhone 16 Pro Max later this year, is it bigger enough to be worth it? It doesn't get a proper keyboard from Apple, so is it a proper work machine? It just runs an A15 chip, not the M chips like the higher value products. Actually, it has a way bigger display than it sounds like, and that's because iPads have a different aspect ratio than the iPhones. The iPhone 15 Pro Max has the biggest display by far, around 16 square inches, while the iPad Mini is way ahead with 40 square inches. Now, that's a massive difference. Also, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max weighs in at 221 grams, the iPad Mini is only about 70 grams more at 293. Now, that's way more screen for not much more weight. But one change to the iPad Mini would allow Apple to eliminate 2 of the Apple Pencils out of the 4 that are in the lineup right now, or at least move them to like a legacy accessories segment of the website maybe. Apple, this might be a good time to get out your notepad. And that is simply moving the camera to the landscape side like they've done with the others. I'm not confident they will though. But if they do the same with the 10th gen iPad, both the base and iPad Mini would be able to have the same edge charging that would be compatible with the Apple Pencil Pro or the lower priced Apple Pencil USB-C. The other 2 can go and hang out in the legacy segment for people adding to their older models or replacing lost ones. Now, what should we expect in September though, other than this camera move? Well, a more recent A chip, most likely the A17 is what I would have said, but I believe the A17 was built on the same node as the M3, which has been moved on from very quickly because the yields were so low. And maybe that actually means that we could get an A18 inside of this thing, just like the iPhone 16. Great, and give the iPad Mini a big boost on the graphics side, as well as AI from the neural cores that we've been hearing so much about recently. And as the iPad Mini seems to be more closely related to the iPad Air line than it is to the base iPad, it might also get bumped up to 128GB of base storage, just like the Air did last week. That may even come to the base 11th generation iPads. But what won't the iPad Mini be getting? Basically, Pro stuff. So M chips, ProMotion, 4K RAW video, that kind of stuff. And I think it's fine because there should be no need for that stuff on a tiny pocketable tablet. Don't expect OLED either anytime soon. What changes we'll see to iPadOS though, I don't know. Software is much less likely to be spotted in a supply chain than a new display panel or a camera assembly, which is why WWDC is probably the most exciting Apple event every year. But what do you want beyond files and being able to somehow magically use more of the power in an iPad for iPadOS? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you to the Patreons, and I'll see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.